Today, I'll be presenting an economic analysis for reciprocal tariffs imposed by Trump administration on April 2. These tariffs, ranging from 10 to 50%, affect nearly all countries including Taiwan. Those tariff rates have been initially set at 32% and later reduced to 10% during the 90-day provisioning period. We'll analyze how this trade affects trade exchange rate and a broader macroeconomic indicator. A tariff is a tax imposed on import goods to make them more expensive. It's generally used to protect domestic industry from foreign competition to raise government revenue. A reciprocal tariff means that the country imposes the same tariff rate on import from a country that has imposed tariffs on its export, that is used to enforce fair trade or to negotiate for better trade agreements. With the US imposing 10% trade on Taiwanese goods, Taiwanese export to the US will decline as the increased cost would reduce demand in the US market. Conversely, since Taiwan may need lower tariffs on US goods during negotiation, Taiwan's import from the US may increase, putting pressure on local industry. The nominal exchange rate is a rate at which one's country currency can be exchanged for another. For example, how many Taiwan NTD are required to purchase 1 USD. Now, let's look at the diagram for a foreign exchange market in Taipei. The reciprocal tariff reduced Taiwan's export to the US, fewer US buyers in NTD, less demand for NTD, and more demand for USD as Taiwan import more from the USD. This shifts the demand curve for USD to the right, causing the NTD to depreciate. As shown in the diagram, due to the increased demand for US dollar and reduced demand for NTD, the NTD will depreciate in foreign exchange market. And we can also look for USD. The increased demand for USD looked for higher change for NTD as reverse. When the imports into the US from Taiwan decline due to the tariffs and export from the US to Taiwan rise due to Taiwan lower tariffs, the US trade balance improved. That is, US net export increased, helping to reduce trade deficit, at least in the short term. The real exchange rate adjusts the nominal rate by relieve the price level, showing the actual purchase power of a currency in the international trade. It is defined as real exchange rate equals nominal exchange rate times foreign price level divided by domestic price level. Let's analyze using a diagram of the foreign exchange market in the US. As the increased demand for US goods due to a lower tariffs abroad, there's an increased demand for US dollar. This caused the USD to appreciate, raising the real exchange rate. This can make US export more expensive over time, partially offsetting the international trade balance improvement. In the short term, yes, US import fell and export rise, improving the trade balance. However, in the long term, as the USD appreciates and US goods become relatively more expensive, export competitiveness may decline, possibly reversing the trade balance gains. So while the policy might create a short-term improvement, the long-term effect will be neutral or even negative depending on currency adjustment and retaliatory policy. In conclusion, while reciprocal tariffs might yield short-term trade balance gain, they can carry a long-term risk, including currency appreciation that hurts export competitiveness, trade tension and retaliation, price instability and inflation. Thus, this policy must be carefully monitored and adjusted. Next, we'll look at the Taiwan's AI. We will discuss the micro impact of Taiwan's AI-driven economic surge in 2024, focusing on export, foreign investment, and government policy response. As we can see, NVIDIA's CEO declared Taiwan at the center of AI in 2024. Thus caused semiconductor export loading increasing significantly, and we can see the investor confidence rise, and they start to set R&D centers in Taiwan. An export boom increased aggregate demand as net export are a core component. This shift leads to higher real GDP, rising overall price levels. AD shifts drive, moving along SRAS, increase GDP and price. New headquarters and R&D center represent real investment, and a real investment boost there's a job creation, and AD shift further shift aggregate demand, increasing GDP and price level. This is a portfolio investment, not a real investment. It does not directly affect aggregate demand, GDP, or price in the short run. Might signal market confidence, but no immediate microeconomic effects. Let's now take a moment to summarize everything we have covered so far using this table, which highlight the different type of economic activity and their effects on Taiwan's microeconomy. First row, semiconductor exports. When Taiwan's semiconductor export increased in 2024, it boosted aggregate demand because of export are a key component of AD. As a result, both real GDP and price level went up in the short run. This is a classic case of demand pull inflation. Too much demand chasing limited short-run supply. Second row, the investment by NVIDIA and NVIDIA in R&D center in Taiwan is a form of real foreign direct investment. This also increased aggregate demand since investment is one of the components. The impact is similar. Real GDP rise and the price level increase as well. Additionally, it creates jobs and encourages local spending, further applying the effect. Finally, when foreign investment by Taiwanese TSMC share, it counts as portfolio investment, not real investment. This does not increase aggregate demand directly, therefore it has no short-run effect on real GDP on price level. It may indicate investor confidence, but it's not an immediate driver of output or inflation. Over time, the capital and productivity improvement from AI investment shift long-run engagement to the right, sustain GDP growth, moderate inflation, reduce pressure on short-run supply. We can do on the fiscal policy, reduce government spending, shift AD debt, decrease GDP and inflationary pressure. Monetary policy, raise interest rate, discourage borrowing and investment, lowers AD supply price level. And we will produce a report on Taiwanese budget cut in 2024. This presentation explains the legalization decided to reduce government spending and analyze the effects these cuts will have on Taiwanese short-term and long-term economic. Let's begin with the background. In the early 2024, government officials proposed a reduction in public expenditure. The motivation was to cut back on what they consider excessive spending, including infrastructure, administrative costs, and a certain social program. During the legalization review, political debates intensified. The ruling party warned that these budget cuts may hurt economic growth and the public service. Meanwhile, the opposite party defended the cuts, arguing that they will save taxpayer money and improve fiscal discipline. Eventually, the proposed budget cut was proposed in rise in regulation yen These cuts will officially enter to become the 2024 national budget. The effects on budget cuts. Lower government spending create uncertainty. As a result, consumer confidence tends to drop. This decline in confidence often leads to reduced household spending, which further suppress overall economic activity. Broadly speaking, government spending cuts reduce aggregate demand. This leads to lower output across many sectors, including construction, manufacturing, and services that rely on public contracts. But the story doesn't end well the initial spending cut. The multiplier effect shows how an initial reduction in spending can have a larger community impact on GDP. As one person's loss in income reduces their consumption, other business seems lower sales, and so on. Here you can see the domino effect. The initial cut leads to a drop in income, followed by reduced consumption, then lower business revenue, and finally less investment. This chain reaction amplifies the original impact. From a fiscal perspective, spending cuts increase public saving by reducing the deficit. This shifts the supply of a loan funds to a right, which lowers real interest rate and encourages more private investment. The diagram shows how increased supply of funds lower interest rate, allowing for more borrowing by households and firms. It can potentially counteract the contraction in aggregate demand. But there's another consequence. Lower interest rate in Taiwan may lead investors to move their capital abroad in the search of better return. This increases Taiwan's net capital outflow. As uncertainty rises and interest rates fall, more investors shift their money overseas. This capital flight often accelerated by market volatility and currency depreciation. In the foreign exchange market, an increase in the capital outflow raised the supply of Taiwanese dollar, and this caused the real exchange rate to fall, making Taiwan's goods more competitive globally. A depreciation currency support export by discouraging imports as a result. Next export increase, potentially offsetting the earlier decline in aggregate demand from the budget cuts. To summarize, the direct effect on reduced government spending lowers aggregate demand. The multiplier effects amplify this decline, but the increased private investment and improved net export act as an offsetting force. Overall, however, the aggregate demand is still key to decrease in the short run. Policy implications like this have long-term implications to contrast the short-run turn. Taiwan may need structural reforms, stricter investment, and social protection for vulnerable groups. Good physical discipline is important, but so is economic balance.